Next up, we have Andrew Patterson, Managing Director of Great Boulder Resources. Andrew is a geologist with 30 years of experience in mining and exploration. After graduating from WASM in 1993, he spent several years in surface and underground gold and nickel production roles before moving into management with Harmony Gold at Mount Magnet. Since then, he has been in executive and corporate roles with a number of explorers searching for iron ore, nickel, lithium and gold in Australia and Papua New Guinea.
Thank you. So today I'm really going to talk about Sidewell, our flagship project, and I guess fill you in on where the project is at the moment, how big we think it's going to get, and where we're going in the near future. So there's the disclaimer, you can download that if you're interested in those sorts of things. So really, the key attributes about Sidewell: firstly, it's very unusual. It's right on the outskirts of Meekatharra, obviously one of West Australia's most historic goldfields. Literally 10 minutes drive from our accommodation out to the rig. And it's in an area, despite that location, that's vastly either unexplored or underexplored. And in the last 2 years, we've defined an inferred resource of over 500,000 ounces at a total cost, all-in cost of $17 an ounce. And we can see a clear path to 1 million ounces by the end of next year. Here's our board and management team. So 4 directors there, 3 geos, and Karen O'Neill providing some commercial nous, and backed up by Mel and Dan Doran, the exploration manager, and importantly, consulting expertise from John Beeson and Scott Halley, who have both had really important inputs into the company. Our understanding of the mineralisation and in Scott's case in particular, our early targeting strategy using the Pathfinder elements there. I won't spend too much time on this one, but the key takeaways here are, despite our location and what we see as the current and future potential of this project, we're still capped at less than $40 million, and I think in common with many of our peers in the exploration space, we're not getting a great deal of love in the stock market this year, and certainly not last year. And so therefore, you know, we're continuing to work away. We're fairly well cashed up. We have heaps of targets, and we're certainly hoping that the gold price kicks off again in the second half of the year. So what we have at the Sidewell project is really, you know, high value ounces, and we say that because they're high grade, in some cases extremely high grade, on the doorstep of existing infrastructure. So we're less than 25 kilometres from Westgold's Bluebird Mill. Westgold are our neighbours all along the western side of our project. We have a good relationship with them, and I think they're doing a great job. However, we are focused on remaining independent, and I'll talk a bit more about that towards the end. What we see there is that this deposit is a large intrusive related gold system, which is, you know, it is a little bit unusual, particularly in the Archean in Western Australia. We've uncovered a large-scale hydrothermal gold camp there. In the stratigraphy, which is actually the stratigraphic equivalent of Paddy's Flat, but we're on the other side of the greenstone belt. And earlier this year, we intersected what I think will be one of the highest grade mineral exploration intersections in the world in 2023. So 6 metres at 589 grams a tonne, including a metre at over 3,000. The location there, as you can see, I'll just put this in for comparison. There has been a lot of interest in the Murchison area recently with, you know, Musgrave, Gascoyne all doing a great job. Ramelius down at Mount Magnet, and of course Westgold, who are also doing a fantastic job with their operation. But really this is what it's all about. So this is our Sidewell tenement. As of this morning, this tenement map's out of date. We have picked up another 5 kilometres of strike at the south end of Sidewell, and got that for quite an attractive deal with the local prospector there. But really, you can see this is a magnetic image, and this big syncline structure, the Pollel syncline, is really the key focus of our activity. Right through the middle of the project there, if you can see my pointer, That's covered by a relatively thin layer of alluvial material, so that was a blind discovery. It was actually drilled about probably 25 to 30 years ago by Western Mining, who also discovered Andy Well in that same round of exploration. Subsequently drilled a little bit by Doro, so we inherited Mulga Bill with a few drill holes in it on wide-spaced fences. It did take us quite a while to figure out what was going on. There's a lot of structural complexity, so we went right back to first principles, air core drilling, pathfinder geochemistry, bottom of hole anomalism, and that targeting technique has proved spectacularly successful. More recently, we've moved our focus somewhat over to the eastern side of the greenstone belt into this mafic, ultramafic sequence, and we discovered ironbark. Initially discovered that about 2 years ago in hindsight using auger geochemistry. That's now, we think, around about 100,000 ounce deposit. But more importantly, we see potential for a whole heap more ironbark type endowments along that side of the greenstone belt. Mulga Bill itself, we announced in February an inferred resource there, 431,000 ounces. As I mentioned before, some areas are spectacularly high grade. That is continuing to grow, and we've done a lot of work, infill and extensional drilling in and around Mulga Bill, and we can see quite a large proportion of that resource converting to indicated when we do the next update. Here's our resource here, and again, I won't dwell on the numbers too long, but really the thing is, it's a pretty high-grade resource. This is largely open pittable material. We haven't done any ore reserve or feasibility studies on it at this stage, so that's, I guess, a future-looking statement. The important thing is also there's this high-grade core, 370,000 ounces at those two deposits, averaging 5 grams a tonne. So it's pretty solid grade, and we think that stands the project in very good stead, and we certainly aim to continue that growth. Zooming in on Mulga Bill itself, this yellow outline is the resource envelope, and you can see really quite a lot of drilling there. Those circular dots are RC maximum downhole intersections, and those numbers are just sensational. Apart from the headline act of 589 grams a tonne, we've got things like 14 metres at 36, and those are some of the early intersections. Complicating things a bit, we also, in the green colour, have our interpretation of copper mineralisation. So that consists of 4 subvertical lodes capped by kind of a supergene mushroom, in effect. And we've put out an exploration target on that copper mineralisation, so that's really interesting, and I'll talk again about that in a sec. Just taking shape now in these red lodes. We're using bicycle brands as our current naming theme, so these are the Malvern lodes. We're starting to define these, and we'll get them into resource later this year. And more recently, we've done some air core drilling out here to the east and found mineralisation extending up to another 300 metres out to the east, and we see potential for more of these west-dipping high-grade veins out there. Over at Ironbark, this is only 1.4 k's to the southeast, so it's not far away. This is much simpler, standard kind of goldfields orogenic geology. It's simple, steep dipping, shallow. Our shallowest intersection starts at surface, so it's quite a different beast to Mulga Bill. Mulga Bill's complex and in some parts deep. Ironbark is simple and shallow, so this is kind of a nice counterpart. Currently an inferred resource there as well of 87,000 ounces at 2.9, so it's pretty sweet, and getting some fairly nice, solid, high-grade zones at depth. We've recently done a handful of diamond holes there and got some really nice numbers in that and a little bit of visible gold. We've got some good structural and alteration information from that, and we'll be doing more diamond drilling in the future, so take note, Toad. Moving on, a couple of cross sections here. On the left, these again quite interesting juxtaposition. the one on the left is Mulga Bill, and that shows the complexity there. Subvertical loads which run north-south through the whole thing, and then what we think is a later overprint of these west dipping zones. You can see different directions of drilling. It took us quite a while to figure all this out, but now we've got it nailed down pretty well, and we're hitting these zones quite predictably in our current rounds of drilling. The cross-section on the right is a representative of ironbark, and with one of the recent diamond holes there, 19.25 metres at 5.2. So, and behind that is the resource model. So you can see we've started to upgrade that resource model on this section as well. Now moving on to the Mulga Bill copper story, this is really quite intriguing. So we've been pretty open about the fact all along that when dealing with copper and gold, it can be a positive or a negative depending on which processing stream you choose. So we've started to quantify the copper both in its spatial extent using retrospective assaying of existing drill sections. So we choose the drill samples using our XRF gun, send them back to the lab, get the copper assayed. And so far we've kind of built a model, or rather an interpretation through here in what we're calling the central zone, and we're now starting to build that through the high-grade vein zone to the north. Interestingly, in more recent drilling north of that dike, in an area that we're referring to as Mulga Bill North, we're also seeing that same association of copper, gold and silver, and with bismuth, the pathfinder there. So the significance of this is that you could imagine a future in which we build a concentrator with the CIL plant on the back of it, and really around Meekatharra there is quite a lot of copper gold deposits, not just on our tenement but on other, particularly to the south of us. Having a concentrator in the Meekatharra district would be quite a powerful position, and that's something that really excites me about the future potential of Great Boulder. Our exploration target at the moment, it's actually fairly high confidence, but we haven't got a resource on it. We're saying we think potential there 16 to 40,000 tonnes in those shapes of contained metal at grades between 0.2 to 0.4. We have an announcement relating to that material from the 25th of May, and that includes all of the standard disclaimers. So where to from here? Really quite a strong pipeline of growth targets, and this ironbark stratigraphy, this is this hydrothermal gold camp that we're talking about. That's 14 kilometres long. We've now added 5 kilometres down here, and we think when we get into that with our auger geochemistry and air core drilling, we expect that mineralisation to follow. You can see what I've got here in the contours is bismuth and gold. We see the same association with things like moly, copper, and some of the other intrusive related associations through there. So really, to put this into context, ironbark was a 2-point auger anomaly. We quickly drilled out about 100, what we think around 100,000 ounces of high-grade gold. If you look at all the other auger anomalies through there, there's just dozens of them, and we're pretty keen to get drilling on all of this as soon as we can. The next step here is to get out there, do the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage surveys, and we're in the process of finalising those quotes at the moment. We'll get our traditional owners out there, clear those areas for drilling and get cracking in this current half of the year. Very briefly, Wellington. This is out in the Irahedi Basin east of Wiluna, so it's quite about 120 kilometres along strike from Rumble's project, so it's not nearology. We actually identified this quite a while ago now, probably 3 years ago, pegged it 2 years ago. It's all now granted. We've done the first heritage surveys out there, and we'll start doing large broad-spaced soil geochemistry in the next couple of months. So this is pretty much a slow burn. It's one of those things, it's 1,100 square kilometres, about 65 k's across, huge potential. We haven't really done any work on it yet, but it's just something that we've got on the back burner. So really, I think the key thing is that, you know, we like to refer to Sidewell as a unicorn, and that's because it's a it's an absolute company maker and owned by, you know, a small junior gold company. We've kind of come from nowhere in the last 3 years, and I think we've got a long way to go. We're very happy with our relationship with our next door neighbour Westgold, but our company strategy is to push this through to development. We're agnostic about whether we build infrastructure or use theirs. Obviously I'd have to ask them, and I haven't done that so far, so we're going to crack on with this on our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.